the Earth. Well, I guess it's not really on the Earth because I have a floor, and then I have a garage underneath that, and then there's like a foundation. But for all intents and purposes, I am on the Earth. And if you're with me so far, then you're gonna like this video. You see, the Earth that we stand on every day, and we go to work, and we go to school, and we do all of these things on top of the Earth is made out of stuff. I know, it's surprising. I can't believe I never thought of it before. And that stuff had to come from somewhere. Where did it all come from? That stuff that our planet is made out of came from stars. And no, not the gold stars that you got on your kindergarten homework for getting all of the ABCs correct. No, it comes from the stars that are like out in the universe. Like, I don't know where the sun is currently, but it's out there. But how does that stuff get from all the way out there to right here? Well, it all begins with this little tiny cloud of stuff just hanging out together. And it can get a little lonely in that little pile of stuff doing nothing by yourself. So what the particles do is they like to invite each other over for dinner. Like there's this one atom of hydrogen called Mike. Mike decides that he's gonna invite some other particles over for dinner because he's a little lonely. Well, we all know how these parties can get out of control very quickly. Like one particle wants to invite another particle, and then you have another particle that wants to invite their friend that's a particle. Eventually, all these particles know that Mike is throwing a huge party, and everyone wants to come to Mike's house. This is called the gravitational collapse of the cloud, and it's when all the particles decide to descend on one center of mass, and in this case, it's Mike's house. As more and more particles come to crash Mike's house party, it gets squeezed into the tiny little house, and it becomes balls hot in there. Now let's take a little science detour for Mike's house party. The more energy that you put into particles, the faster they move, and the more likely they are to collide, which releases more energy, which actually creates heat. The particles at Mike's house drank a lot of Red Bull and vodka, and they're gonna bounce off each other like it's a heavy metal mosh pit. This releases energy in the party. Eventually, the particles will start hooking up with each other because that's what you do when you're drunk and full of energy. This is known as nuclear fusion, and it's when things get so hot in the star that the atoms actually start to fuse together to make heavier nuclei. Like hydrogen will fuse together, and then two more hydrogen will fuse together, and then those hydrogen will fuse together, and that's how we get helium. So the particles at Mike's party continue to hook up with each other until you have a veritable orgy on your hands, or I guess Mike's hands in this case. This process continues until you go from hydrogen to helium to carbon to neon to oxygen to silicon, and lastly iron. You can't fuse anything beyond iron because instead of releasing energy, it actually takes energy in order to fuse anything heavier than iron. This process can take millions of years and usually takes billions. Okay, back to Mike's house. There are particles doing it in the bathroom, in the closet, in the bed, basically everywhere in Mike's house. Eventually there are too many particles to actually fit inside the house, and their weight collapses the house in on itself. This then releases energy, causing the house to explode. I know what you're thinking. The analogy gets a little weird at that point, but that's what a supernova is. Now here's the cool part. All the elements that were contained in that star get spread out all across the universe until a planet forms around some unknown star in the universe using that supernova material. A planet just like Earth. The ground that you're standing on is comprised of oxygen and silicon, which forms silicon dioxide, which is better known as quartz, which is like sand. The most abundant mineral in the Earth's crust is actually feldspar, and its chemical equation is a little more complicated than silicon dioxide. Like, really complicated. And all of that junk came from some drunken orgy inside of a star. So I would just like to thank Mike the Particle for his sacrifice so I can have a planet on which to walk. You rule, Mike. Danny, I will see you tomorrow.